Hello, this is Christina Barr. You're watching Black Tea News. Hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we're going to be talking about some comments that former Governor Chris Christie made about conservatives. He's running for president, and or he was saying that particular candidates aren't really conservative because of the transgender policy. He's talking to Piers Morgan, and he doesn't apparently like people making laws saying that, hey, you can't sterilize their kids, I guess, with the puberty blockers and all that kind of stuff. So I think, I would, Chris Christie is not the most conservative guy. If I was gonna, list some people, I certainly wouldn't say Chris Christie. I've made it very known and very clear that I think he's a waste of space in this race and has no chance. And whatever his ulterior motives are, I don't appreciate it, but he has no chance of winning that nomination. So we'll talk about that. Also, there's a woman in Nebraska who helped her daughter obtain an illegal abortion. The baby was about like 29 weeks. So way past the time when you're allowed to do that. So, and she got abortion pills, and which is really dangerous at the point to try to use. It could be for the mom, but they also might not work. So there's just a bunch of different complications you can have. And so they lied to the authorities about what happened to the baby, and they tried to burn the evidence. And so they both ended up getting charged. The mother is the only one who's actually charged for the abortion itself, helping to obtain the abortion. In America, we don't really push for laws to punish the woman, more like the facilitators of it. But people are pro-choice people are upset because this mother is getting jail time. Like somebody, like Jezebel just wrote an article, and I saw somebody retweeting like, oh, so much for not punishing the woman or whatever. And it's like, ma'am, you killed a 27-month-old baby and lit it on fire. That's pretty gruesome. And so we'll be talking about that, and also some other news that hits home or is close to it. I guess not hits home because it's across the pond, but so many people have it in their head that people don't do late term stuff. And so not only are we seeing people illegally do late term stuff, people do schedule appointments to have late term abortions, not emergency ones for, oh, something's wrong with my blood pressure and we need to have an operation, which they would just induce in those kind of circumstances. So we've talked about this before. I find it important to talk about again, since I get people in my comments all the time that are like, it's not a thing. I'm like, what do you mean it's not a thing? And so I mentioned some of these stories. And so I want to kind of lay it out for you guys. You can be for it or you can be against it, but let's not pretend that it's just not happening or it's impossible, or that they only happen for the purest of intentions, because it's just not true. And also, I just saw this, so maybe we'll get into it more later because I don't know how much I can kind of look online for this information while I'm talking to you guys. But there's a Democrat lawmaker who just, I guess, decided to switch parties, and she's a Republican. And so, I mean, she's a black Democrat, and so she's switching parties. And so, the first time I saw this woman, I saw her post something about being school choice, and so I actually retweeted her and I said, "Thank you for being for school choice," because that's something that should be an effort that both sides of the aisle reach across to try to accomplish. And there are, Democrats who reach across the aisle to try to accommodate, because they know a lot of their constituents, especially a lot of their Black constituents, want school choice. And if you don't know what that is, I'll go into that in a minute. But apparently she's decided to leave the Democrat Party. So we'll talk a little bit about that today. But before we jump into it, I want to encourage you guys to go to blackteeners.com, check out different content on my website, different articles, different videos, etc. If you like my content, I ask that you please consider supporting Black Teen News at the website on the donate page. It costs to stream, it costs to run my website. I got a bunch of renewal stuff to come up and other things. So if you can support, I ask that you do financially in that sort of way, whether it's a gift of $10, $20, $50 or more. I thank you guys who have, gone that extra mile. Again, it does really help so much. If you're watching on YouTube, you can do super chats and super thanks. If you're watching on Facebook, you can't send stars. Also check out different merch that we have at the store as well, since we're on this topic. Well, there's a My Money, My Business shirt here that I made because people are like, it's none of your business. I'm like, what do you mean it's none of my business? We all talk about this stuff and it involves taxpayer dollars and other things. So, what you're saying isn't true, since they want to appeal the Hyde Amendment and other things. So there's other examples besides appealing the Hyde Amendment. I mean, the abortion lobby really does, really, really, really does try to get your money. They try to make it so your employers have to, they pay for it via insurance. Even like Christian groups, there's a lawsuit for, like, I think in California, Planned Parenthood advocacy group out there who was trying to, um, they're working kind of hand in hand with the government to try to get these Christian organizations to have it included within their insurance and pay for it. So it's really not. People say it's a private matter. The abortion industry doesn't believe that. They want it to be a matter that everyone participate. Well, not everyone literally. Well, yeah, I guess everyone participate in some kind of way. Not everyone go out and actually have an abortion, but they expect everyone to participate in some kind of way. By the way, I saw this crazy video. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to find it while I'm talking to you guys, but and I did want to talk about it maybe tomorrow, but there's a video that Libs of TikTok posted that I saw circulating around like TikTok and other places of a trans woman who said that they wanted to have a uterus transplant just to have an abortion. And that's so sick for so many different reasons. So many that we don't have all the time to go into today, but man, that is wicked. Just absolutely wicked, wretched, prepare the flood kind of thing. Tell Gabriel blow the trumpets or something. That's really perverse, but we'll talk about that later. Maybe we'll hit that tomorrow. Also, it is Prime Day, so a lot of people are buying stuff on Amazon. Just so you know, I do have all my books available on Amazon that you guys can check out. I have 17 that are published that you guys can see. 2 are nonfiction. One of them being my, of course, God is Blatantly Against Abortion book, but and another one being Slay Your Fear, How to Overcome a Spirit of Fear. But the rest are fiction of all different sort of topics and categories and stuff. I write action adventure. I write children's chapter books, paranormal romance. I was watching Constantine last night, and it made me think of the series that I have that's like a demon slayer book called Almost Alive. It's about a girl who unalived herself, and when she came back from hell, she didn't come back alone. So she meets this other demon hunter who did the same thing, and he has the same condition, but he teaches her. He said, "I'll teach you how to survive and basically get control of this, but you have to learn how to hunt demons." And so her demon kind of like drives her to kind of hate him, but then it drives her to kind of lust for him. And so it's like a we want each other, but we know we're bad for each other kind of thing. And then And in the second book, things really kind of flip around. So that's one of my mini stories, books, and stuff that you guys can check out. I really like that series. I had this book on hand, The Dark Mermaid, which is, basically a it has elements of Hans Christian Andersen's book, and also some little things that will remind you of Disney, some little Easter eggs, but it's kind of more like vicious sirens. Like the one of the lines is Luna was born with a serious defect. On the surface world, they call it kindness. So I have some books that are some of them are on the darker side, but sometimes it's you have to kind of see through the darkness to find the light, I guess, is how I put it. None of my stories glorify evil. So go ahead and check me out. If you go to blacktnews.com, go to the merchandise page, there's a banner that'll take you to my book website where you could search my name, Christina Elbar, on Amazon, and that's where you can find my stuff. So anyway, let's jump into the actual commentary. Sorry for the very long intro. So I'll have to get better at that. So you guys know that I like to start with something funny. And I saw this meme, and maybe it's a little mean, but I don't know, big people like to trash on big people. So at least that's how it was with me and my brother. So um since we're starting with Chris Christie, someone posted this meme, and I just thought it was funny here. So some time ago, I don't remember exactly the story, but he said that they had to close down the beaches or something, and then he was at the beach in this lawn chair. So people are like, "What the heck, you hypocrite?" So then it prompted all these memes to be born of just him in this lawn chair in his shorts, just everywhere. It was just plastered all kinds of different places. And so if you ever see a meme of Chris Christie in a lawn chair, that's what that's about. And so obviously this is also a play on his weight as well with the breaking of the road. But now anyway, why did someone post this? Other than the fact that it was funny. There was an interview that he had with Piers Morgan, and he was talking about Republicans who are using the power of, the legislative branch to protect kids from um, having hormone blockers and getting surgery and stuff, because that is happening to minors. People are like, that stuff doesn't happen to minors. Go look up Chloe Cole, who started puberty blockers. What was it, like 12, 13, something like that? She said and she had consent from her parents, but her parents were told, like, if you don't do this, your child will unalive themselves. Would you rather have an alive son or a dead daughter? That's what they tell these parents. And that's what they tell the rest of us, by the way. They emotionally blackmail the entire world to go along with this. And then they're like, it's not a then they tell you it's not a mental health issue. And it's like, if people are saying that they will unalive themselves, I think there's something going on here. But they'll deny it. But and then she chopped off her breast, I think, at 15. And so it's really impacted her life. She's a very, very vocal advocate against trans surgeries and affirmation and stuff with minors. And there's a lot of people who have been highlighted in the past and uplifted. Like there's a one young woman who's on a show, I think it was a MTV, maybe. They were highlighting different trans kids and stuff, and now this person as an adult regrets what happened to them. And not everyone's going to go back and regret. Not everyone has the capacity to kind of look themselves in the mirror and say, I made a mistake, even if they're not happy. So you can't expect like everyone to do that. It maybe some people are like, say that they're legitimately happy with the decisions that they made, though there are some people on the internet who say that, who I'm like, you're not well. You don't there's some strong denial there. But there are definitely people who are speaking out about this being a huge mistake. So Chris Christie, again, who I would not consider that's not my go-to person for when I talk about conservatism and stuff, was on Piers Morgan and took the side of not using any legislation to I guess tackle this issue. And perhaps when you watch it again, maybe he's talking about just his role as like a federal aid, person in the presidency as far as like banning stuff on wide, but he seems to clearly have an issue with Republicans locally doing it as well. At least that's my interpretation of the situation. So we can go ahead and watch this clip here.
Females.
Done. What about the issue of gender reaffirmment? This is a hot potato. This is where people want to know, if you were the president of the United States, how would you feel about kids from, say, 10 to 14? Even I was thinking you said that you think their parents should be involved. It shouldn't be an issue for states and so on. But is that really a sensible way to go? Given all the abuse in this area that we've seen?
No, I think it is. We're having a big argument in our country, too, about parents being excluded from educational choices for their kids. And we as a Republican Party and conservatives say parents should decide their children's educational choices. Well, I don't think the government has any business getting in between a parent and their child in any one of these instances. I believe we should put parents in charge of these decisions when someone is not at the age of majority. And I always thought that that's what conservatives were all about. We wanted parents to be in charge.
But most conservatives are not about that anymore as a mindset.
Well, then they're not conservative.
Well, or maybe you're not a conservative by the modern yardstick.
No. That's like saying that now a biological woman isn't a woman by a modern yardstick. So don't use the modern yardstick one way and then want to change it a different way, okay? What is very clear to me is that conservatives don't want big government in their lives. They don't want big government interfering in their lives, especially in their personal lives. They don't want the government saying what books their children can read. They don't want the government saying, what their education should be. They want parents to be involved in the middle of that. Well, gee whiz. But shouldn't they be in the middle of making those decisions regarding their own kids?
But it's also a government's responsibility to protect children. And what we've seen in the last few years is a creeping erosion of kids' rights, where many of them are being frankly mutilated. And so a lot of people are looking to politicians now to take a lead and say, enough of this, enough of these clinics all around America. We've had them in the UK with the Tavistock Clinic and others, where frankly, child abuse and mutilation has been going on. Is it not incumbent on politicians like you who want to be president to say, enough of this, we're going to protect our kids?
No, it's incumbent upon politicians to deal with other issues other than this. Let parents deal with these issues. My view of it is when we have war in Eastern Europe, when we have inflation that is bankrupting people in this country, when we have educational standards dropping through the basement, when we have a border that we can't protect, immigration system we can't fix. No, I don't believe that's what we should be doing. Let the government do the things they're supposed to be doing well first before they start substituting for a parent's judgment. Parents should decide where their kids go to school. We should have educational freedom, and parents should decide these issues, these very difficult sexual, emotional issues with their children. They shouldn't dish off that responsibility to the government.
You want to be president. To get there, you got to win the Republican nomination.
That's what I've heard.
To do that, you got to knock out Donald Trump.
Okay, so that's a not a popular take from Chris Christie there. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I've already said it in this broadcast. I don't understand why he's running. He's not going to get anywhere. People are not going to support him. At least not the Republicans are going to support him. Maybe you can find a poll where he's doing okay, but as we covered in another episode, the RNCs, there's a lot of polls that are not even qualifying for their consideration, because you have to have 800 likely Republican voters. That's not I'm not going to say it's not easy to do, but a lot of polls don't have that many Republican voters to make that to cross that threshold for the RNC. So even if you saw a poll that maybe had him, I don't know, at 3% or something, that doesn't mean that that the RNC is even considering that. Maybe he'll get on the debate stage, maybe he won't. I don't know, but I don't know what his end game is. Maybe he just knows some folks that'll raise him some money. And I don't understand these people who will raise. Does anyone think that he has a chance? So why would you give? I don't I don't understand. I don't understand in the least bit. But this idea that it's not like conservatives wouldn't do this, like they're changing the definition of conservatives and try to be cheeky, like just like they're changing the definition of a woman. Um Larry Elder had an interview with Dave Rubin, and Larry Elder he did run for governor of California in the recall. And he but he has a great interview with Dave Rubin. This interview that he had with Dave Rubin really kind of pushed Dave into kind of looking at his thought process and going a different way, because Larry Elder really, pushed him as far as like, what's your explanation on police brutality, or why do you think black people have it so bad, and other stuff. And Dave just kind of had these answers that he was kind of programmed to say that he hadn't really given a lot of thought to, and that he couldn't really substantiate. So it's a great interview if you haven't seen it before. But in the interview he asked Larry Elder, he's like, well, why are you libertarian rather than conservative? And he said, because I think that conservatives wouldn't mind legislating morality they disagree with. And I'm like, oh gosh, that's fair. I'm like, that is fair. That is fair. There's a TikTok going around, by the way, of a woman who said, young woman, and I made a YouTube short. I just haven't posted it yet. Where she's like, we deserve. She's talking. She's answering a comment, and she's like, I deserve to have free healthcare. I deserve to have a livable wage. I deserve to retire at a decent age. I deserve housing. I deserve. And she's saying these things that she deserves, and a lot of people would agree with those statements. But I could like dissect all those things, because I don't agree with all the things that she said. Because you're talking about deserve. Are you talking about like you deserve it because you've earned it, or you deserve it because it's an inherent right? And you obviously can't have an inherent right to someone else's labor, as far as like healthcare or something that's a commodity. It's very kind when people choose to, do charitable things or to help you and etc. But it's not a right. I know in other countries they view it as a right. It's definitely not a right here in the US. And it and it's definitely not a negative right one, because you don't come born into this world with a right to healthcare. You need someone else to provide it to you. And so or saying that you deserve to retire at a decent age. Does everyone deserve to retire? Because she said everyone deserves these things. I'm like, does everyone deserve to retire at a decent age? What if you think about the worst worker that you've ever worked with? Do you think that person deserves to retire at a decent age if that's how they live their life, their whole life? Just kind of a vagabond who shows up anytime they want to, puts in the bare minimum. They deserve that. They don't, they didn't earn it. So is it like an inherent right to just be able to retire? And where do we get this right from? And who's the one who gets to like supply you with the money? Is that the government that has to make it so you can retire at a particular age? Or are you saying that it's your employer who you're like trading, you're trading your wages for um your labor? So is it up to them to just inherently give this to you because you know signed an agreement when you first signed up? I don't think that, does everyone deserve to have a job, if even people who take advantage of that job and don't really do the job? So there's just a lot of things that don't make sense in that mentality. But I didn't stitch it to kind of dissect her argument and say that I disagreed with it. The reason why I stitched it is because there's a lot of people in this world who talk about what they believe, or they want to dismiss you because of they'll say, well, that's a belief. Like, we're going to talk about abortion, later. And if I bring that up, and you can just kind of just state a bunch of facts and just statistics and the science or whatever, and someone will still say, well, you stop pushing your beliefs. And then a lot of people will just go, well, it's not a belief or whatever. But you can just acknowledge, like, everyone has a belief that they push. Everyone tries to legislate a belief on some grounds, like the idea of like personhood, that it's not a baby until it comes out, or it's not a baby or a value has value until it can take care of itself, or it can survive on its own, or until it's conscious. You know, all those are, you know, arguments for personhood, and those are beliefs. That is a philosophical concept, and we're debating the merit of those beliefs. But everyone is saying, this is what I believe, and this is where we should legislate this thing. This I this idea that it's a woman's right because it's a woman's body, her choice. That is a delusional belief. It's not even true. Everyone knows it's not true. That's why you want the abortion, because there's a body inside your body, and you want to make sure that entity is dead, and then you want to expel it, right? That's why you take the first pill to kill the baby, and you take the second one to expel it. It's what happens. So we all know that it's not, but people spout different beliefs. So, um, so we all believe certain things, and we debate whether this is good for society, bad for society, what or the benefits, positives, whatever. Like, if you want a livable wage or minimum wage, like, if you, what happens when we can't hire people because you set the ceiling here when it should be on the, you know, what the floor should be here when it should be like actually at the floor, and people should be able to negotiate prices. Can the business owner afford what you're saying needs to be minimum wage? Like, those are all things that are debated. And we debate those things all based on what we believe to be true, what we believe to be what we believe should be, you know, the government's interference or whatever. So in the case of like the transgender stuff and Chris Christie here, and he's talking about, well, there's important things that the government should be doing. This isn't something that the government should be doing. And peers pushed back on him and said, shouldn't the government protect children? And Chris Christie kept comparing that to children and their education, and and how parents want to say and how their children are educated. How kids are educated versus like doing physical damage to their bodies isn't the same. Like, I think it's important what you teach them, and parents have the say in how the children are going to receive different moral concepts, and especially moral concepts. But when you send your kid to school, you would hope that they're going to be neutral and learn the things that they say that they have to learn in the curriculum, as far as math and science and history, especially like, you know, civics and, you know, economics, you know, when you're a little older, etc. So you hope that they're learning those things, and when they start interjecting all these other sort of sexual things, because they think it's moral to do that, because they're like, well, your parents might believe this thing at home, so I have to supersede them and teach them these values, so I can instill this within them and raise up this whole different generation, you know. um that's something that parents should say, whoa. And as he said, educational freedom. I think if you're a parent, the best bet to be able to protect your kids is to really homeschool them. School choice will definitely help with you being able to send them to a place that you hope shares your values, and will educate them accordingly. But if you really want to do best by your kids, and you know, protect what they can learn, and protect them from some of these activists that have infiltrated the schools, best thing you can do is homeschool them. I know a lot of people find it to be really difficult, really hard. A lot of people find a way to make it work. You know, if I don't have children myself, but I don't ever plan on putting them in the public school system. And I had you know, some good experience with really good experience with public school system, and some, eh, you know, not, I can definitely criticize it for sure, but I don't think people think I'm younger than I am. I'm 34. I don't think it's like how it was when I was a kid. I don't think it's like that. But when you have, like, when a teacher, like the purpose of the parental rights and education bill in Florida, you had administration and teachers who were hiding details about their kids' well-being and their mental health and other things from their parents. Um, you know, it's someone impacting your identity and them deciding that they're a boy or girl, or they're a person who's trapped in the wrong body. That's different than, they like that they're a tomboy, or they're a little bit different. They like to wear, different clothes that are different than everybody else. But to go that extra mile and be like, you are in the wrong body. You're talking about something psychologically wrong with your child, with someone else's child. And people try to hide that from parents. They're like, well, we'll call you this at school. And if we're talking to your parents, we'll call you your real name. And where do you want to sleep on overnight trips? Do you want to sleep in the boys' cabin with the rest of the boys because you're actually a boy? When I think about those things, it makes me, beyond like the gender stuff, it makes me so upset that someone would have the audacity to do those sorts of things. So yeah, there's legislation like, no, you cannot do that. At the end of the day, if something happens to these kids, are these teachers are the one who are going to plan those funerals? They're going to get those caskets. They're going to bury those children and then mourn for years to come because they're gone. I don't think so. Maybe one or two might show up. But you are a babysitter getting paid to teach them math and science, etc. You are not the parent. So there's different social responsibilities on a teacher than there is a parent. So yes, they get a huge say in what their kids can learn, especially as taxpayers. With their money, their taxpayer dollars are funding the schools that fund the salaries and everything like that. So yes, they definitely have a say in the education. They definitely have a say, especially when they go beyond math and science and want to get to different moral topics. Where kids are, being indoctrinated a particular way. And I don't think that's the same. It's comparable to saying, hey, let's give our kids some puberty blockers. And when they cannot comprehend possibly all of the effects that this will have on them, and this will no doubt change their lives, the course of their lives. Let's chop off our daughter's breasts, who knows, maybe one day would like to breastfeed her child if she ever decided to have one. Let's do that while she's like 15, because that's what she wants to do. And a lot of these parents, as I already said with Chloe Cole and her parents, they are scared to death. They are scared to death. Parents are shamed, and then they are scared into going along with it. They tell them that your child will hurt themselves if you don't go along with it. And I think it's one, if a child is at that point where they're willing to hurt themselves, you have to look at what other sort of psychological issues, maybe beyond like the dysphoria. I'm not saying they don't have dysphoria, but there's if you get to the point where you want to hurt yourself, you really need to see if there's other underlining issues that are getting them to this conclusion. That is some really, really dark stuff when you're willing to cause physical harm to your being. You really, really should not jump on the fast track to let's start chopping off pieces or injecting with drugs, especially chemical castration drugs. That is not the route to go. And if people have it in their head that this is the thing that people do when they can't get the surgery, or they can't get their hormones or whatever, it kind of implants within their head this idea that this will be the acceptable thing for them to do if they wanted to take that out. So I think with them threatening people with unaliving themselves, it puts a lot of kids in a position where they're at more risk of actually doing that. So I think we handle this so wrong. If a parent decides to abuse their child in some kind of other way, like if a child decided that they were fat and they weren't fat, and the parent kept giving them, I don't know, pills to make them have diarrhea, pills to make them throw up, and other things like that, because that's what made them happy, and there's just skin and bones, and they have, um, body dysmorphia, and the parent is like, this is how we're going to help our kid. We would call CPS. That's what we would do. That's what we would do. We wouldn't be like, "Oh, that's just the parent's choice to do that." We would be concerned about the well-being of the child. And that's what these bills are. That's why you have see these people, gays against groomers and all these folks speaking out against people targeting kids. When you're adult, they say you can go ahead and make your own choices. And even trans people who are adults are like, I wish I would have waited, or other people need to wait, or I did wait and it worked out well for me, but what if I didn't, and I regretted it? I have a friend, he's a mutual on TikTok, and she got in her head, she said being told that she could change her gender really, really screwed her up. She still has dysphoria. She said if her body could be like a Ken doll, she'd prefer to just have nothing. Um, but she said if she had access to being able to transition, she would have transitioned, and she would have regretted it. And so she's a fierce person who's against all this sorts of stuff. So Chris Christie saying, "Oh, you're not conservative," like I don't think conservatism is just about having a limited government. Like, we do want the government definitely limited to roles that we think that they should be operating in. But I do think one of those is protecting children from harm. Um, why would that not be? Um, and he brought up, like, there's war going on in the middle, and in across the world, and there's Ukraine and Russia, and there's other things to focus on, and that's true. That doesn't mean that you can't do more than one or two or even three, four, things at the same time. Executive branch is pretty big, and there's all sorts of different priorities from from Congress. They don't work on one subject at a time. And so that's kind of a cop out for people who are like, oh, there's other things to focus on. Sure. It's also, you got a big team there. Do you not? And also, I'll say the sort of things that we accept, like on an individual level, on a local level with this stuff, it really vastly affects our society moving forward. And Yuri, can't think of his name beyond that, but I've talked about this before. There's a former KGB agent, and he was talking about like indoctrination and how y- you impact the mind of a society, of a country, and once you do that, you're basically screwed. Like, he talks about espionage, like the idea that, Mission Impossible, I think it's out now, or it's coming out this weekend or whatever. Like, people have James Bond and other stuff in their mind about like espionage and all this kind of cool spy stuff. And he said that's not really like what goes on in the world. Like, not that it doesn't happen, but I'm sure it does, and I'm sure we wouldn't be told the truth of how much that kind of stuff happens. But he said that the real sort of destabilization of other nations and stuff is to go in there and change the minds of people to impact the youth. And so he basically said America was like done already, because you go in, you go to the colleges, you get those kids, they grow up and they become the adults or whatever, and they keep influencing other people. And so he had that interview where he basically said it was too late for America in the 80s. So I don't know what to tell you now. So this just, letting it be or whatever, like it's a not a big deal. I think fighting for truth is a big deal. Fighting for the future of our children is a big deal. To not do this irreparable harm to these children, I think that's a big deal. I'm not saying there aren't other things to focus on if you're the president of the United States. But Biden is also very focused on Ukraine and handing them lots and lots and lots and lots of cash. But he's also focused on very, very, very focused on, way focused on trans issues than he is about like Black Americans and the other folks as well. So I thought it was a cop out. So I'm not voting for Chris Christie. Not a fan of Chris Christie. Didn't like him before. Wasn't going to support him the first time I go around in 2016, and he's not going anywhere in the primary. So let's move on really quickly. I just want to point out again that there is this Democrat lawmaker from Georgia who is no longer going to be a Democrat. And let me just go to her page really quick so you guys can see her. And again, I first saw a tweet of hers when she was talking about school choice, and I just retweeted her, and I was like, well, thank you for being for school choice. That's something that a lot of people appreciate and fight for. So, you know, I wish we had more Democrats who would be like, yes, we should support school choice, but they can't because they're so in the pocket of like teachers unions and stuff, and they really want kids shackled to the public education system, and so they can't support school choice. If you don't know what school choice is, the idea of it is that the dollar would fall, your dollars, instead of it going to because they'll look at like how many kids are like in a school and they'll fund them that way. But instead of like it funding the school, you fund the student. So if your kid goes to I don't know, you want them to go to this private school or something, or this charter school or something, or even if you want to be homeschooled, like the money used for their education wouldn't be toward a building, it would be toward their actual education. So a parent has more options to choose where their child is going to go and what they're going to learn and how they're educated to better prepare for their future, as opposed to not having school choice. Your child may just be trapped within a zip code, unless you can just like homeschool them, but then you're also but you're still paying for your school because of, there's still like the federal funding that goes into that school. There's also your property tax that's still funding that school, but you may choose that they go to a private school, so you're still paying into that school system while you're still paying out of pocket for your child, or you're paying out of a pocket for your child to do the stuff in homeschool. So instead of people having to pay twice, you could just pay we could all just pay for our children to have good education the one time. People advocate against school choice because, well, you'll hear people say a lot like, well, it'll defund the public schools. And the reason why it would defund the public schools is because if parents choose to not have their child go to the public school, that's how they lose money. If you're not the automatic answer, because parents have options. So if you're so worried that parents won't choose a public school, that speaks to something being wrong with the public school. So fix the public schools. But in the meantime, like, don't be afraid to compete. Competition is good. Competition is good. So, but they don't want competition. So Rep Misha Manor has decided to no longer be a Democrat. And so she had tweeted, I didn't leave the Democrat Party. The Democrat Party left me when it embraced left-wing radicalism, lawlessness, and put the interests of illegal aliens over the interests of Americans. I have nothing to apologize for. So, a lot of people say like they left me. I don't know if that's true. I think maybe there's a point where people are like kind of wake up and they're like, you know what? they don't jive with me and my beliefs. Like my parents, were always conservative, I guess, but they didn't know that they were Republican until like 2000. So, I think that's the case with a lot of people. They don't know probably how Republican they are, or maybe they like some Democrat policies in regard to some of like the social programs and how those things are funded. But a lot of these social issues where people are kind of like, not as loud and pushy about, right? Or they weren't so radical. The push to the radicalization, it is legit. That is true. That is true. So there were issues that they played it more middle of the road with stuff. Um such as like the LGBT issues or the border and stuff. Like they're so like open border right now. It wasn't always like that. Um but I'd wager that a lot of these people they really are kind of maybe more conservative than what they know. But since the left is so loud about particular issues, that's allowing them to wake up and kind of be like, you know what? If there's no middle ground here, I can't do this. Like one time I was having a conversation about my attorney general who was like, we need drag queens for every school. And she was the attorney general who was upset about Hamtramck, the all Muslim city council, like voting to have like no only like government flags, and she said it was evil because they want to be able to fly pride flags. So that's my attorney general. But one time we were talking about them and other Democrats and stuff online, and there was a moderate Democrat who jumped in and it was just like, because someone was like, these issues with these gender library stuff and the drag queens in the library, they're like, these are fringe things, these aren't real things. And I was just like, Dana Nessel said this and blah blah blah. And then someone who was a Democrat was like, no, these things are happening and I wish they weren't. Like, I'm more moderate. And I said, look, we're probably going to have Democrat representation. At that time I was hoping like the Democrats wouldn't sweep, but I at least knew that in my area where I'm going to be represented by a Democrat. I would rather not have a totally bonkers, insane person be someone who's representing me. I would rather them, if they are going to vote, Democrat on some things, I'd rather them be a voice of reason and not go so far left. So there are moderates out there, but I don't. It's like they're after 2016, they just kind of got like pushed out. Gosh, I'll never forget Jim Webb. Jim Webb at the debate with Hillary Clinton, and I can't remember, Bernie Sanders, of course, was there, and I can't remember who else was there on the debate stage, but they were asking like, who's your number one enemy? And so some people are like the NRA. Hillary Clinton was like, probably the Republicans. She named a couple people, but she ended with like probably the Republicans. And Jim Webb was like, well, I would say the guy who threw a grenade at me, but he didn't live very long. And so it was just a dud. Like he probably like had that line in his head or something, like, I'm going to use this line one day. And thought it was going to get like a roar of applause. Like, here's this guy who fought for a country and was just like hardcore, whatever. And it was like nothing, no traction at all. And it was probably like a negative that he said that. But I watched that. I watched that when I was like employed by the Michigan Republican Party, because we were like live tweeting at the time. And so we were all together. When he said, they were like, oh my gosh, that's like an amazing answer. Like we were pumped, like, oh my God. But it was a total dud for their side. And so after that debate, and I'm not saying this is the only reason he dropped out, but he was just like, I'm done. Like our party's like he didn't leave the party, but he just recognized that they were really, really progressive or regressive, and he didn't stand a chance. He didn't stand a chance. So he got out. He got out pretty quick. But I'll never forget that moment, because he sure did think he had something of value to to say. But as far as this representative here, she's correct that the left has really, the Democrats have embraced left-wing policies as far as like social issues and other things like that. But the people, she was, someone who was against defunding the police. That was a thing that was very, very Democrat. And how so? Well, my governor said she supported the spirit of defunding the police, but Joe Biden was also someone who was like, pro to the defunding the police and stuff. They walked it back because they realized it was a terrible decision, but they are trying to memory hole it like it didn't happen. But it did. There's tape, there's video out there. And a lot of people don't like illegal immigration. As a matter of fact, Hillary Clinton's Tim Kaine, that was her person who she ran with in 2016. he actually like proposed in the past that we should fund a border wall by like finding the illegal immigrants. that was that was his idea and stuff. So they switched it and they decided that walls are racist and you just got to let everybody in. Um so people don't like all that stuff. Even like immigrants particularly don't like illegal immigration, the ones who waited in line. Um but black people, like there's been different reports in like different neighborhoods, and they're upset because they see all these illegal aliens everywhere being especially like sent to like Chicago and New York and other places, and they're just like, why why are we being overrun, and why are y'all treating them better than y'all treat us? So I hope more people wake up, and I hope she doesn't get slammed too hard, and if Republicans can kind of lay off I understand the narrative about the Democrat plantation stuff that Candace Owens and other people use. I'm not gonna say I've never said it, but I don't typically say that, and I can definitely understand why people find that insulting when you're talking about how they're mentally enslaved. But some people are, I guess, but there's just better ways to reach across the aisle and say, I'm glad you're here. Thank you for your sticking to your guns and really trying to represent your constituents. Because what she's saying are things that I'm sure her constituents agree with. But if walls are racist and we can't do anything about our border, and the the Biden administration, they had, I just saw a video about someone was on Timcast talking about how they looked at how they changed their language on illegal immigration and like trafficking, and like they removed portions about how having an open border and stuff facilitates the trafficking, and very curious thing to take out. I mean, I understand why they took it out, because they want open borders, and they don't want to solve the situation, and it's continuously getting worse, and it really does help to exacerbate the problem of children being trafficked, and children are sexually assaulted on the way up through the border and stuff. And they travel with these coyotes, and then people will be trafficked within the United States itself. So we do not have our priorities together. Kudos to this representative. So moving on, big story out today, especially like in the pro-choice, pro-life circles and stuff, striking conversations. A Nebraska mom pleads guilty to helping a daughter 17 obtain an illegal abortion, and so there's a couple of different articles about this right now, but this is from Fox, but I'm just gonna kind of go through the details because I don't think I really need to read this myself. But Jessica Burgess admitted to providing an illegal abortion for her daughter, who was 17, and her daughter was apparently like at 29 weeks. And so she supplied her daughter with the pills, and you're not supposed to do it past like the 10th week. You're not supposed to do that. And they lied about what happened to the baby. They said that she had a miscarriage and that they buried the baby. And they got tipped off. The police got tipped off or whatever, and they investigated. And that's not what happened. She, of course, gave her the pills. She had a baby, which killed the baby. And then they tried to burn it. When the police found the baby, they found like burns and stuff on the body. And then they, did bury it or whatever, but to try to hide the evidence. But they tried to, incinerate it first. And someone on Twitter, and I guess they were supposed to be a lawyer. I don't know what kind of lawyer they were, but like, well, why is this really a bad thing? Because people do cremate their bodies, and people are just like, there's so many regulations about how you dispose of a body. They're like, you need to quit your job. You can't just like, if your mom passes away in her sleep or something, be like, break out the blowtorch. That's not what happens. So no, you can't just lie about what happens to the remains of a body and burn it and lie about how they died and stuff. So the mother is being charged for the illegal abortion. The daughter's not being charged for that. But as far as like this conspiracy to of lying about it, of how they disposed of the human remains or tried to and stuff, that's what the daughter is also, being charged with. So people are upset. Now this mother's 42. Um um 29 weeks, man. That's obviously very close to your getting to the point of your due date. That is a baby that can survive outside of the womb. But um I mean, if you say if you believe bodily autonomy is just absolute and it's my body, my choice, that's a pretty extreme position. Like people say that, I don't think they really think it through. One, bodily autonomy is you making decisions for your life, for your future, for your body. So if it involves someone else, that's not the same as bodily autonomy. And we do not have full authority for bodily autonomy anyway. People don't, and a lot of these people who say, my body, my choice, didn't believe that during the pandemic and all sorts of other stuff. But there's, particular laws against really hard drugs and other things like that. So we just don't have total free autonomy with our body, especially when it comes to using our bodies to hurt someone else. But if you really do believe that, as long as it's in the mother that she has full authority to be able to do whatever, why, I guess, why are you upset about the 29-week thing? But most people are like, gosh, that's absolutely awful. But there's people who want abortion totally decriminalized. And so I saw someone tweet out, Leah Littman. What does Leah Littman do? She had a big account. A professor at University of Michigan Law. Said a mom who helped. I'll share the screen so you guys can see this. It said a mom who helped her 17-year-old daughter obtain abortion pills and in her pregnancy, that's how they say it, pled guilty to several charges. Her daughter, who also pled guilty, will be sentenced soon. So much for not punishing women, I guess. So again, she defined it as just ending a pregnancy. It's not what just saying ending a pregnancy. And there are people who say that ending a pregnancy is an abortion. Like I saw a comment the other day where and it wasn't on one of my videos, it was on someone from Secular Pro Life videos, and they're like, someone literally was telling me that I had an abortion. I had a C-section. Gave birth to an alive child. But I have seen people with big accounts who are really big, like pro-choice debating people, just define abortion as ending a pregnancy. They really try to do this conflation thing. And no, you're missing some steps. An abortion is it is a procedure that ends the life of an embryo or a fetus. Well, it's a medical procedure resulting in the death of an embryo of a fetus. If it is in a spontaneous abortion, that is a miscarriage. It is something that happens spontaneously that you do not try to happen. No one wants that to be legal. It's when you go to the induced abortion, which that's what the whole debate's around. When we talk about 1 million babies being aborted a year, we're talking about it through induced abortions, not spontaneous ones. That's the reality. So phrasing it as if it just terminated or ended the pregnancy. Again, when you take the pills, there's 2 pills that you take. One of the pills suffocates / starves the baby, and then the second one makes you have the contractions that you push it out. Now, it really doesn't. You're at 29 weeks, and you can't just have the baby. You can't just have the baby. And when this story first got reported, which before we go into that, someone had retweeted this and said, killing a 29-week-old fetus, which is 7 months, and setting it on fire was illegal under Roe 2. So, be like, oh, this is a post-Roe world. This was not a good thing last year either. This was still not a good thing. Before the court, what happened at the court, guys? Um, she at the point, you definitely could have just waited a little bit longer. But when this story first got reported, people were saying, "Oh no, face the police looked into text messages or instant messenger to get this mother and daughter for this abortion." And so they just reported it like Facebook did this horrible thing cooperating with the police. Now what happened was they got a warrant to be able to look at messages, and the daughter had, because they wanted to know what kind of intent they had. And the daughter had messages like, "Oh, I can't wait to get this thing out of me. I can finally wear jeans." There was no like heartbreaking situation like we think she doesn't have a brain or something like that. Some major deformity. It was, "I want to wear jeans again." Like, I don't know what other, reasons there could be beyond that and stuff, but they wanted this baby to not be alive, guys. And this story is horrific, and I wanted to share it. Well, it is like news today, but I also wanted to highlight it because there's people out here who just can't fathom that women would do this. And it's awful. Like, we've been talking about Sound of Freedom in that film, and the trafficking of the children, how awful that is, and people are trying to brush it off like some kind of conspiracy. It's like, no, this stuff happens. There are places where you go that are probably hot spots that you are unaware of. And it happens more than you think, more than you can fathom. And people need to be aware, and people need to speak up. There's people in high positions of power, people connected to people of high positions of power, people like Epstein, for example. And Epstein, oh my gosh, had and even after stuff about Epstein came out, even pictures with Bill Clinton with some people who were like Epstein's like alleged sex slaves, he still spoke of the Democrat convention. I'm like, what? They don't have to do this. Masterclass still had a Bill Clinton masterclass. I'm like, do they want Hillary to be the president? Are they trying to reform them? What's going on? But these are the people, and I'm not saying he touched kiddos or something like that, but I'm just saying there's dark things going on in our world, and people, we can see how they're protected anyway. So think about what's happening behind the scenes that we don't know, period. So there's things that we don't want to grasp that are happening. And with this particular issue, some people, when you talk about abortion, people will automatically jump to well, most of them happen really early or whatever, which I don't like them at all. So that's a weird talking point to me, because people will automatically jump to, well, people mostly have them early. Okay, well, what about like the 10,000 that happen later? If we can set the world, the country on fire because over BLM 2020, because we're saying the police are hunting down black men, and if you look at those numbers, which I'm not saying, one is too many if someone is literally hunting them down, but they don't really happen as people really describe. There's all the, you have to look at case by case and the circumstances of what actually happened. But like, if people are guessing like how many unarmed black men are killed by police, some people think there are thousands, some people think there are hundreds. The answer is like more like 20. So that's something that can impassion the country to the point where we just let people like do riots, and we're like, well, that's just the cry of the unheard. But tens of thousands of babies who can feel pain are aborted, and we're just like, not a big deal. That's kind of sick to me. But people will brush that off because they're like, well, these women, they would only do it in situations where they're really extreme medical emergencies. People like Hillary Clinton tried to pass that off, and Pete Buttigieg tried to pass that off, and I wish that were true, but it's just not the case. It's just not the case. I'm not saying that that's not never the case, but first thing I want to know, when people talk about medical emergencies or medical situations, they might not be emergencies. Well, if you're having some kind of medical emergency, like your blood pressure spiking or something, it takes days at this point to have an abortion. So if you need the baby out of you fast, they will induce the labor. And if the baby lives, that's great. If they can't, that's very sad. Still not an abortion. So having an abortion takes days. to prepare your body to do that. It's much safer to try to induce the labor. Um, but there are medical situations where maybe your child is incompatible with life, and rather than doing some kind of palatable care, they want to abort. And that's something that people, more conversations I think need to be had about that. But that's not what's going on in like a lot of cases. There's one woman who I follow on TikTok, and I actually talked about her in my book, but um she was a young woman who had a child, and his foot was deformed. It was like this. And her doctor was told her several times that she could abort. And she also said the doctor was like, "Well, you're young and you're single." Like, she tried to like make her feel like she was inadequate, and she felt like she was coherent. They were trying to coerce her into an abortion. And so she didn't do that. And so they amputated the foot, and the baby, they got, a prosthetic, and the baby can climb. And well, the baby's a toddler. The baby, runs and climbs and has fun like a normal child. But in that scenario, the baby was like at 25 weeks at that point, I think, somewhere along that lines. And they were like, "Yeah, abort the baby because this foot is like that." So that's a real story. So if you think that it only happens because the child doesn't have a brain or something like that, or is going to pass shortly after leaving your uterus, going through your the canal, that's not what happens. That's not what happens. That's the case sometimes. I'm not trying to say that women don't have really sympathetic situations, where they're essentially doing mercy killings for the children. You can debate whether that's kind for them to do that or not. Which there is a story. I don't remember where it's from, but like what state it took place in. But there was a couple who was upset because, and I think CNN was reporting it, and they didn't get a chance to say goodbye because of the abortion restriction laws, and their child was had a condition where they wouldn't, I think maybe live long. And so they wanted to be able to say goodbye to their baby, but because of the abortion laws, they couldn't have an abortion there. So they had to go somewhere else to have the abortion. They're like, it denied us access to say goodbye with our baby. And I didn't understand the logic with that, because if you were in the state and they had the same procedure, you still wouldn't be able to say goodbye. I mean, unless someone would just like induce the labor of the baby and they just came out faster, but that's not what happens in an abortion procedure. So it's a really bizarre um way to phrase it. And this poor couple that had to endure the loss of a child, and how they're twisting it for the narrative is very strange. um but let's talk about another story. In the UK, in the UK, there's a woman who is 44, and she was jailed for a late term abortion. Now in the US, a lot of like our activists, like pro-life activists and stuff, want the laws to just punish people who facilitate the abortions and help someone facilitates it and stuff. Like like in the situation with the Nebraska mom, it was the mom who they punished for the abortion, not the daughter. Now the daughter was an accomplice to like other like cover-ups and other stuff like that, got charged. But they want to punish the doctor, this person who gives the pills or does the procedure, whatever. They don't want to do it to the woman. So in the UK, they have this law that and they're like, this law has been around since Victorian age. And I'm like, just because a law is old doesn't mean that it's bad. Like it's too old fashioned to not be able to kill the 34-week baby. I don't know, that narrative is kind of wild to me. But the activists are saying that they just want abortion decriminalized because they don't think this woman should go to jail. So this is an interview on Talk TV with this activist, and it's pretty remarkable, the sort of justifications that these people have, or not justifications, but the way they go around and around in a circle for their views.
Community campaign group. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for joining us. I mean, this whole story is awful. It's awful for the child that died. It's awful for the family. It's awful for the woman who's been incarcerated. But at the end of the day, this woman knowingly, deliberately killed her unborn child. Many of us would use the term murdered her unborn child. She didn't need to do that. We know from her Google searches, what the judge had heard in court, that she knew what she was doing was wrong. She knew that it was against the law. Does the law need to be changed?
So abortion is healthcare. 1 in 3 women have had an abortion in their lifetimes. If you haven't had one yourself, someone you love has had an abortion. And it's time that the law treats it as healthcare. As you've said, a woman has been sent to prison, a mother of 3 has been sent to prison on the basis of a Victorian law from 1861 that urgently needs to be removed from our law books, because if we don't decriminalise abortion in the UK, this won't be the last case that we see. And I think if we look...
So, I know she's gonna, the host is gonna respond well enough, but this Victorian law thing, I'm like, maybe they, it's not a bad thing that people back then apparently knew the value of a child and that it was bad to kill them. Like this, we've so many people think it's okay today because they've rationalized themselves into it with all these complicated, kind of philosophical ideas. Like I said earlier, that people debate their beliefs and stuff. Personhood is a belief, and we're picking these arbitrary lines. Just like, oh well, people, when they're brain dead, that's when we can, they're dead. So that's if you don't have any, if you're not conscious or whatever, we're not going to. And it's like, there's a difference between being at the end of your life and you're basically a computer booting up, bro. It's like, it's not the same. So I don't think a lot of arguments really, I really haven't heard an argument that really makes sense. I think there's compelling arguments people can make, but they're the ones that tug at your heartstrings when you empathize with the person in that situation. And you're like, gosh, I can understand why you're kind of in the situation, but you still have to ask yourself, but is it worth killing someone? Now, if you don't see that person as a person, then, I can't get you there. You're always going to think that your need surpasses, the baby, if you don't actually think it's alive and human or whatever. But a good way to kind of think about if your reason is justifiable is to imagine if it's a toddler. Like, oh, financial reasons. Would you kill your toddler for that? Oh, my, got a bad boyfriend. Would you kill your toddler for that? Just age him up a bit. Would that reason still be the same? Because if you're just hiding behind the fact that it's in you, then maybe your reason's not so, your actual reason for why you're deciding to have an abortion isn't actually so good. I want to finish my major. Would you kill your 2-year-old for that? Or it don't have to be a 2-year-old. Would you kill your 2-day-old child for that? Well, someone else can take care of them. You can wait 9 months and someone else can take care of your child now. So think about it from that way. But the Victorian law thing is, she immediately starts spouting off her talking points. Like abortion is healthcare. How healthy is her baby? How healthy is this woman's baby that she aborted? It's not. It's not. That's a thing you say. It just because you keep repeating it doesn't make it true. But we are talking about someone who the baby was like between like 32, 36 weeks, maybe. Remember, it was 32, 34, really, really late in the pregnancy. So she called up, she got telemedicine, lied about how far along she was, got the pills. This is not something that you should do. If you're pro-choice watching this, you should not be doing this. But the baby did die, which is what she wanted. She Googled, like, will I go to jail for this? So she knew what she was doing. And now she's jailed, and now these people think it should be decriminalized. They're saying this woman shouldn't be in jail. and she's separated from her family, which if you commit a crime, you are always separated from your family. Your family does not go to jail with you. So let's keep watching.
Look at what laws were around in 1861. This was 77 years before the NHS. This was before the women had the right to vote.
No, I understand. Look, it's a very old law. But the thing is, this is the thing I find difficult. I defend the right to abortion. I'm appalled by what's going on in America. Women lose the right to abortion. But abortion isn't just healthcare. As someone who's had a child and as someone who lost 4 babies to miscarriage, I know what a 12-week-old baby looks like in the womb, and I definitely know what a 33-week baby unborn in the womb looks like, and it's a baby. At 12 weeks, it's a baby. We accept abortion as, in many cases, most of us, the country at large, and most of Europe has accepted, and most of the Western world, that abortion is often the least worst thing. It's never a good thing. It's the least worst thing in a scenario where an accidental pregnancy has happened, a woman just feels unable to have a baby, even for financial reasons, and I accept that right. However, there comes a point during that pregnancy where the woman's sort of absolute right that starts being weighed up against the child's right to life. If you're saying it's just healthcare, say a week before my baby was due, would it have been okay for me to have aborted, to have killed my now 16-year-old daughter because it's just healthcare? Would that be acceptable to you, or would you not think that was a crime?
Conversations, it's interesting. Conversations on abortion really bring out, obviously, very emotional and personal responses.
Well, it's the life of a baby, so yes, it is emotional.
It's hugely emotional, and I'm glad we're having this conversation.
So could you answer my question?
Regulation of abortion should be left to healthcare and not criminal law. That is fundamentally my position, and that is far.
I understand that's your position. I understand that. I'm not sure I want this woman to be in prison. I'm not sure that's the solution to the question. But should it not be against the law to kill a baby at, say, 6, 7, 8 months gestation when they are completely viable and those babies would live on to a happy and healthy life? Where if I didn't want the baby, I could abort the child. I could have had an earlier termination. Are you saying you don't think it should be a criminal act when I was 8 months pregnant for me to abort my child?
So abortion is healthcare, and it's time.
No, Janie, don't just repeat the same thing. Answer the question, because it's a specific question. Answer the question I've asked you.
So I think that I just believe there's far too much fixation.
No, Janie, I don't know who else that you've been interviewed by who accepts this. You've got a considered view. You campaign on this issue. Mm-hmm. Answer the question. I'm 8 months pregnant. I've decided I've changed my mind. I don't want to have my baby. My baby is perfectly viable. It's kicking, moving inside me. Do I have the right, because it's just healthcare, to abort my baby and face no criminal repercussions? Yes or no?
Yes, and you should not face criminal repercussions. This is a decision for you, and it's for medical experts.
Sod the baby.
And nurses.
Sod the baby.
I think in Carla Foster's case, we should be talking about her 3 children, her 3 born children, who the judges has decided to separate her from for a prison term. That's
most many go to prison have got kids too. Look, I don't think it's ideal. I don't think it's the right decision. I think it's a desperate situation.
So, yeah, what a wild interview. And you could see on her face, like, I don't want to say the thing that I actually think. But she did. She doesn't think it should be criminalized to kill a bit. And she's still at 39 weeks. So you got, 1 week to go. Not even just 1 week to go. People plan to have births prior to that, because like if you want to have a C-section or something, and make sure that you're in you schedule to go in early, because you don't want to be waiting like to just burst or whatever. So at that point, you could definitely just have the baby. You could definitely just have the baby. So it's not at this point. You got to go through some kind of process to get it out, right? So at this point, it's not about just your life and your body or whatever. You're just it's at this point, you want that baby to die. You don't want to take it to, I don't know what sort of safe haven laws are in the UK, but we have them in the US. where you can take them to police station, take them to a fire station, and if you have the baby, that you kind of no questions, and they'll find a place for your baby, someone to raise them and whatnot. They'll give them to the proper authorities and stuff. Someone, I said give it to a police station or fire station. They're like, they have their own kids. I'm like, do you think I mean that the fire station has to adopt the baby? That's not what those laws are. You could take them to the hospital, or you could have an adoption plan. You could do all sorts of different things at that point. But if you're waiting that late, but there are women who don't want their child alive in the world somewhere, and being raised by someone else, having to think about, well, what's going on with my child, which is so wild to me, because I'm like, what, there are people who are so grieved because they wonder about what their child would be like if they were alive, if they hadn't aborted them. There's one video, this trend going on TikTok where the scene from Monsters Inc. and you have Sully, the big monster. I love Monsters Inc. by the way. It's one of my favorite Pixar films. And he's in the premise of the film, there's all these, well, the monsters go and they scare these kids and stuff, and it's like their fuel and their energy and stuff. And so they have a plant where you open up different doors and you end up in different like children's rooms and stuff. So this kid gets lost in the plant, and so he's taking care of them. They think children are also toxic. They find out that they're not, and so anyway, he's taking care of this little girl, and he's trying to get her back home to where she belongs. And so the TikTok trend is he opens a door, and then Boo goes through. And in the film, she goes to her room, and she's like excited or happy or whatever. And he's looking sad because he's like sending her off. In this particular TikTok video I'm talking about, though, they edited Boo's room, and it just kind of looks like, I guess, their idea of heaven, and it's like a beautiful garden and other stuff like that. And the caption is like, about abortion and how they thought they did what was best for their child. And so the imagery of the fact that they use this, and I don't know how deeply they thought about this when they made it, but the mother basically releasing their child into heaven, I guess, hoping that their child, they made this difficult decision. Now their child is in heaven. Hopefully they're happy somewhere, or they'll see them one day. But the imagery of hoping that for your child, while the person who did it is a monster, is this really sympathetic monster that made this decision, is really powerful. And then you look through the comments. I first saw this video because a friend of mine pointed it out, and they said this video is the reason why I won't believe women when they say that they don't regret their abortions. And there were so many comments with people just comforting each other and talking about how difficult it was, how sad it was, how much they think about that child, how much they hope that they're okay. So it was really, really something. I'll have to show you guys it and its comments one day. It was really wild. Like, you don't have to do it that late. You don't have to do it early. You don't have to do it at all. But at 39 weeks, and this didn't happen at 39 weeks. People are like, oh, people wouldn't literally do that at 39 weeks. But you think that women should be able to. I think that's problematic. But if you're willing to do it at 39 weeks, there's someone who's willing to do it at 32, 34, 33, 29. Kermit Gosnell, if you don't know anything about him, and I've mentioned him quite a few times, he was an abortion doctor. He's in prison. And he got convicted. Now, his place was disgusting. People would go to his clinic for an abortion and leave with like an STD. It was disgusting. But low income women would go there. They pay, big amounts of money, cash, and they didn't have to go through days procedures, because he would just induce the labor and then he would kill the baby. Now, for some reason, we think that is so much more vile than what actually happens. But he also had a woman who died from a botched abortion, but the baby that it was illegal to do them how late he was doing them. But he got convicted for one baby boy A. And if you go to Kermit Gosnell's movie.com, you can go look at the resources and actually see the picture of baby boy A. But he was 32 weeks, estimated to be 32 weeks. And that was a big boy. He even joked about this kid would be big enough to walk him to school, to the bus stop. And so that's one of the reasons why one of the workers took a photo of the baby, because it just kind of struck her how huge it was. But they just told their staff, which a lot of them were not like really trained or whatever, to induce the labor, and then they would kill the babies. So what he did was monstrous. And we don't like to think of women going to clinics and doing things that late. But a mother who was 32 weeks pregnant did walk into there. I'm not having this conversation to be like women are evil. That's not that's really not my intention, but I think we have to say, if we're okay with this, if we're okay with ignoring, it's just going to be something that continues to get worse. And you'll see more cases of women deciding it to do it that late, and whether they go to a clinic or they get pills and they do it and say it is unsafe to not go to a doctor and have them analyze you anyway. What if you have an ectopic pregnancy? I mean, I guess you, at that point, if it's really late, you wouldn't have one. But if you have trying to have an early abortion and you have an ectopic pregnancy and you take a pill, you could die. So I want people to be aware of the fact that we are capable of doing some really heinous things if we don't look into the mirror and acknowledge what we're capable of and what's going on and what we're willing to justify. And so people who keep trying to just, shoot off like this doesn't happen or women wouldn't do this, I'm sorry, it's not true. I wish it weren't true. I wish to God it wasn't true. And as far as people doing this in the clinics, we talked about people doing this stuff illegally. We already went through a article about abortion doctor Warren Hearn, who's out in Colorado, who's had a practice for a long time. You can have there's like no limitations in certain states in the United States. While Roe v. Wade was in place, some people think that just, I don't know, made it so that it's not beyond 24 weeks. That's not true. You're allowed to have abortions, like no restrictions, basically, under Roe v. Wade. But they profiled him and they said, since Roe v. Wade got overturned, they're really busy because people will come to Colorado for abortions from him. But they said there are women who go there to have the abortions for the mercy killings and the really sympathetic situations. But they said this is probably just like half the women who go there. And this is someone who's very renowned. He wrote a textbook on abortion. He's a renowned abortion doctor. He doesn't like that term, but what he does is vile. So I'm gonna keep using it because that's what he does. So he also admitted that he did like at least 2 sex selective abortions. Like, I wanted a boy, I don't have a boy, so I'm gonna abort this girl, or vice versa. So he's admitted to at least doing that twice, and his reasoning is like, well, all abortions are healthcare because the baby's in the woman. So it happens, and I just got a comment like it was either yesterday or the day before. Someone was like, this doesn't happen, and I listed some of these examples we talked about today. I'm like, please don't lie to me. Don't lie to yourself, but don't lie to me. I unfortunately know these stories, these stats, and it makes for a really, really grim world. But you got to shine a light on an issue to get people talking and to start thinking about how we need to make some adjustments in our world. That's one reason why people are talking so much about Sound of Freedom, to highlight this awful thing going on. When which they talk a lot about Uncle Tom's Cabin in that film, like, well, at least at the end of it, Jim Caviezel, I've watched a lot of interviews, so he mentions it a lot about how Uncle Tom's Cabin, that book in the Civil War, highlighting the brutality of slavery and stuff, helped to open up people's eyes to see how horrific this was, to start changing hearts and minds. So the war became something bigger, and really led to the ending of slavery and stuff. But when that book first came out, people said it wasn't true. People claimed it wasn't true and it was an exaggeration and slaves weren't treated like that. People refused to believe it. There, I guess, people who did, but there are people who refused to believe it. So she had to do I think she did like a separate book that was like, this is all the stuff that inspired this story. And is it Josiah Henson who is the character of Uncle Tom? That's how you found out, I think, that it was about him. I think that's his name. Forgive me if I'm wrong. I'm looking it up. Yep, that is correct. So people didn't want to believe it. So you got to hold the mirror up to the evil. I mentioned that I watched Constantine yesterday. And at the very beginning of the movie, they're exorcising a demon out of a little girl. And at one point, he tells them to get a mirror, and they get a mirror. And once they get the mirror and the demon looks into the reflection, and he said something about the demon being vain and stuff. And then the demon looked up, and then all of a sudden that they were trapped in the mirror. It was still in the little girl, but it was like trapped in the mirror too. So they had to throw the mirror out of the window, and then it fell to the ground and shattered. And once it shattered, the girl was free of the demon. So unfortunately, I think that's what, it's bad enough that the evil exists in our world, but you have to hold a mirror up to that person so they can see themselves, so that reflection of that evil can be caught and captured. And once it's there, once we can all see it, because nobody else, you could see the girl like manifesting, but you couldn't see the demon until it was in the mirror. You couldn't see the demon until it was in the mirror. So once they were able to, see it and shatter it, that's when the little girl was released. And I think that's got to be how we fight evil in this world. Maybe some of you are like, it's not evil, it's women's rights, etc. But we are talking about late term. I don't like it at any point, but this conversation is about late term. When you really don't have to do it. The baby, once you have a baby in you, it has to come out. It has to come. She said, this woman was like, well, she has 3 born children. Let's talk about them. All of her children are born, like, birth is coming out of the canal. You're going to come out alive. You're going to come out dead. You can come out, there can be a miscarriage, and there can be stillborn, or you can, it's still, the difference between miscarriage and stillborn is just like when it occurs, what time it occurs. And then the baby can come out alive. Birth is just coming out. So when people talk about forced birth, abortion is forced birth because you're forcing them out. I guess you could technically say an induced abortion is the same too, but like that is forced birth. It's got to come out of you. So if you're talking about a baby can live, but you choose to not let it live, I know it's probably sound harsh when I said they want a dead baby. At that point in time, yeah. And there are women who'd rather have them, who feel like if they have an abortion, it's kind of like an erasure. Erasing it a bit. That's not what happens. And I can point to plenty of women who have such awful regret, who know it's not a blank slate. Anyway, thank you guys for joining me today. Appreciate you guys being part of the conversation, especially when we go through tough and difficult topics. Please go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on my website, different articles, different videos, etc. Check out my book, of course, God is Blatantly Against Abortion. people ask like, why the theology stuff? And people say the darndest things is why. I mean, yet last night, which I've repeatedly had to have people that have said this before, but like, God killed his kid, so why can't I? Yes, people say that, so I have to break that. I'm like, Jesus, laid down his life, and that's not the same as you taking someone else's. And he's also 33 years old, so I break down stuff like that. There's more complex like arguments or whatever that people make. That one's like pretty, I think, simple, but I've heard it too many times. So it deals with philosophy, and it deals with rights, and it deals with science, and it deals with the political landscape, and redemption over condemnation with this topic. But which, by the way, I have an interview with a friend of mine. Her name is Ronquel. We talk quite a bit about the redemption part and forgiveness. And please go check out that video if you haven't seen that interview and stuff. Like, I know we talked about a heavier side of these things, but I just want people to know, like, if you have had an abortion, I don't want you condemned to hell. I don't want you condemned for the rest of your life. I don't want you to, just be so grieved to the point where you don't know how to go on or whatever. I don't want that for you. But I do think that we should recognize this evil and try to have the world turn from this. So go check out that interview if you got the time. We'll make the time. It was a really good interview, but you guys can check out my book, of course, Guys Blatantly Against Abortion, and also my other books. I have 2 nonfiction books, and the rest are fiction. Check out different merch at blacktnews.com. Like the we got Roe Casey. Well, we got some gender stuff on there, but we got the Roe Casey aborted life wins shirts and stuff, so that's available. As well as like black tea mugs and other stuff as well. And if you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate, cost a stream, and run my website, all that stuff. So if you can support, God bless you. I really, really, really do appreciate it. I can't do what I do without you. And I'm really grateful to you guys being in the chat and your comments. Looking at some of them now. But it does help other people find, the stream and stuff. So that really does help. Thank you guys for watching it live. I'm monetized on YouTube. On Facebook, you guys can always do stars, and you guys can do super chats and super thanks, as well. But thank you to those of you who go to the website and go that extra mile and support. So thank you guys, and I will see you tomorrow.